Okay, it's a perfect day in late August. That means it's tomato time, and that means tomato sauce. So I've got a recipe for this, but if you want to see how I do it, this is how. So fresh tomatoes from Parkdale Market, just down the street. I pay 15 bucks for one of these guys, and they probably get it from the superstore for 6 bucks. And make their end for me some fresh local garlic. Sandy's taking a picture here. And the preferred type of tomato is this Roma tomato here. But I bought some of these field or other types of local tomatoes too. They're good as well. And often what I have are tomatoes that friends have shared with me. Some local onions, a bit of garlic. I don't know if you can tell here, but I prepared some olive oil with some basil just to give it a little bit of flavor, and a little bit of kosher salt. Any kind of salt will do. And the basic idea here is we're going to prepare these tomatoes and stew them as the first step, and they'll end up in a jar like this, which will be processed and sterilized so that we can make the sauce at our leisure later. So this is that step. So I'll show that to you in just a minute. It's really a waste-free kind of thing. You can see I have a little container here. We'll just take the parts that we discard, I'll show you that, and it's basically a garbage-free kind of thing. Hey everybody, okay, we're ready to assemble. So garlic, gonna show you a little garlic trick. Basically take the bulb and break it into the individual cloves. We're gonna put each of those cloves, as many as this bowl can take, maybe half full, and then using 2 bowls, 2 pots, anything will do, a violent shake. It's a bit noisy, so do it outside. We'll break all of the paper off and leave you with some nice clean cloves. So I won't do it now, but that's something that saves a lot of time. We'll be using the garlic fairly extensively, but it's a personal taste issue, of course. Stop it, you guys. So as I mentioned before, we've got a lot of tomatoes here, and the general idea essentially is we're simply going to quarter them. I can cut them in half if they're small, like that. You can optionally remove the stem part. Some people leave them in. It doesn't really matter all that much in the, eventually they can be fished out later, they can break down. Depends on how fussy you want to be. When we have enough of these, they're going to go in this container. So we're going to continue to fill this, and I'll show you that in a moment, but the idea essentially is to fill half full or so of these tomatoes, and then to add a good heaping dose, maybe 1/4 cup or so, of olive oil, and then essentially about a tablespoon or so of salt, really just a taste, and that's it. Then these are going to be baked. You can use the oven top if you like, but it tends to create too much heat on the bottom, and it can tend to burn if you're not watching it. So what I do, a little trick, is I bake and at a fairly low temperature, about 300 degrees, even less is fine. But it's just enough heat to get them to reduce in their own juices so that later when they cool you can remove the skins. And that basically is what this step is all about. Once that is done, it's a matter of jarring them and preserving them. And that's it for this step. Saturday afternoon at the opera, of course. And I have no idea what I'm listening to. That's the opera world for you. 400 in regular rotation in the repertoire, and I must know maybe 50 of them, maybe. Almost there. I don't know if you can see, but let me give you a quick little peek here. So you can see that we've got some tomatoes. Not quite there yet, but one of the key ingredients here at this stage are these lovely onions. So basically peel them, tear off whatever you want. Essentially the same kind of idea. I quarter them. It's as simple as that. Throw them in at any stage. Some people prefer to put them in at the bottom. It doesn't matter. And then this is the tomato stew. It essentially consists of these onions, tomatoes. I've got 2 kinds in here. Usually it's just Romas, but as I mentioned, I definitely get lots of field tomatoes from my friends. The uglier the better. It doesn't really matter. They all, as long as they've got reasonable pulp. I cut off the stuff I don't want. We're good to go, and we reduce them, and we have a lovely, lovely tomato stew, which once preserved is a critically important first step in the process of making sauce. By the way, interesting thing, at least as far as I know, is that sauce is a very American thing. You know, I think most Italians would laugh at you if they knew what we were doing here. Because what they do is they just make a tomato stew, canned tomatoes, whatever they have, fresh tomatoes reduced, and that's their sauce. And they add spices and onions and add it to whatever they happen to be cooking. Where we do this extra first step in making sauce, and it is a lot of work. But I think most of us who've had a very good quality sauce appreciate the convenience of it. It's a lot of fun to grab, and especially on that busy Tuesday night, so that you can just enjoy whatever you're cooking and save that extra first step. So there you go. Okay, quick check on the garlic. So I did exactly as I had mentioned. Shake, shake, shake. It's very violent. And frankly, a little bit of peeling here. So there is a little bit of work to be done, but it is pretty easy. And as you can see, the garlic is lovely. So what we want to do is essentially take the same number of garlic buds or cloves as we have onions. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. Again, it's a taste, but that's what I do. I just add those for flavor. Some people cut these up and put them in oil, which is a great idea because it adds a lot of garlic flavor to the oil. So that's another trick if you want to make it in advance, is put it in oil like this. Keep it in the fridge though, because it can get very acidic, and it gives off a bit of oxygen, so it can cause a few little problems. So just with a little bit of care, you can do that, and refrigerating the oil makes all the difference. Another tip as well about using fresh herbs if you're new to cooking is that you can't take fresh herbs and put them in oil unless you use that oil right away. If you use that oil right away, it doesn't matter. But if you want to keep it and put it on salads and put it on things, you know, in the future, what you need to do is dry it first. And so you can, on a sunny day like today, you can put it out on a table and dry it. You can put it in a frying pan, add a little bit of oil and cook it, and then add it, which is something that I do quite frequently. Or you can put it in the oven on a baking sheet at a very low heat, something like 200 degrees, for about 10 or 15 minutes, just to get the water and moisture out of it. And then you're fine. And then you add it. That's exactly what I did here. And this oil has been with me for about a month, and it's just absolutely fine. So there's some tricks for you. So we're going to add these. I'm going to add some oil now, and basically we're done. I've set my oven to 300 degrees. It's ready now, but I'll give you an idea of about how much oil I use. It's about like that, so a fair amount. And I could actually add a little bit more. If some of the basil from the oil gets in there, that's a bonus. Okay, same with the oil. It's a very, you know, imprecise measure here. And looks like this is a new one. Let me get this open. All right, and you're talking like about that much. There we go. We're done. So one other little option for you is you can add sugar. If your tomatoes are a bit acidic, adding a little bit of sugar will basically control to some degree the acid. But I do that stage when I do the combination stage, which I'll show you later. So at this stage I don't add any sugar, but you can, if you want, add just a little bit, you know, maybe about half as much of the salt that you put in, and that can make it a bit sweeter if you feel that you need to do that. So there you go. Okay, that's it, all done. So we have this large pot here. I'm grimacing because it's heavy. This is my leftover pot. Usually I just try and get a couple of these. One is in the oven right now. When it's done, we rotate, get them all done. Well, that other first one comes out and cools. It may be as long as tomorrow morning before I get to it. Once it's cooked, it doesn't really matter. It's sitting in its own stew, but you can't leave it too long, maximum 24 hours. Once it's cool and it's cool to the touch, then it's good to separate. And of course, that'll be the next step that I'll show you. So that's it. So, the process of separating begins. First, a little coffee. Okay, so this is just a very mechanical and rather dull process, continuing through all the pots, removing these skins. Pulp, skin, discard. Keep the good stuff, repeat. Okay, all done. So this is what remains of the two pots. That's what we're going to stew. This is just our leftover pot, so you get an idea of exactly how it looks just before we can it. And this process to remove all these skins here took about an hour or so. Okay, jarring step, very straightforward. Taking these, putting them there, making sure that we have about that kind of level, and it's repeat, repeat, repeat. So once we've got some jars filled and we have a pot available, next stage is to save a bit of time by getting these ready to preserve. So notice the water level before and after. We want the water level to be about 1/4 to an inch, I'd say 1/2 inch to an inch above the caps. That looks good. Then that's a matter of putting it on the boil now. You can see they're completely submerged. With the tops firm but not too firm. They actually need to breathe as the heat that is applied is going to force out air, so you need it to be just tight enough to keep the air on top from going in the jars and enough room for the air in the jars to leave. Okay, setting the timer for 15 minutes. There we go. And you can see here that that pot is on a rolling boil, like that. And it's going to stay that way for that amount of time. And then we'll do that one. Okay, 15 minutes, so we are pulling them out with that, placing them there, and when these are done, we'll slip those guys into there and repeat, and it will end up there.